Right now, somewhere in America, a driver is pulling away from a fast food window, having just paid $22 for a single burger, a handful of fries, and a drink. They are looking at a receipt that feels less like a fast casual transaction and more like a minor financial mugging. We aren't talking about dry-aged Wagyu served on a porcelain plate by a waiter with a tie. We are talking about flash frozen beef slapped onto assembly line and shoved into a greasy paper bag by a corporation utilizing algorithmic efficiency to extract maximum profit. In 2026, the American burger landscape is undergoing a violent Darwinian purge. The era of the cheap, reliable roadside meal is dead, replaced by a hyper-inflationary battlefield where historic brands are entering bankruptcy court while others quietly experience the highest profit margins in their history. The paradox is baffling. On one hand, you have multi-billion-dollar conglomerates blaming the supply chain, blaming worker wages, and testing dystopian tech features like AI-powered surge pricing, charging you extra for a cheeseburger simply because you made the mistake of getting hungry during the lunch rush. On the other hand, a tiny handful of regional chains are refusing to raise prices, continuing to source fresh, never-frozen beef from local farms, and absolutely destroying the global giants in customer satisfaction. This is no longer a matter of taste preference. It is a war of corporate philosophies, and the casualties are piling up in real time. Consider the sheer scale of the collapse happening right behind the scenes. We are witnessing an unprecedented wave of closures. One legacy brand that practically invented the late-night drive-thru has burned through restructuring plans, silently shutting down up to 200 locations in the first half of this year alone after system-wide sales cratered by over 7%. Another premium fast-casual darling that promised antibiotic-free, pristine beef grew too fast, buried itself in debt, and went completely belly-up in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Even the Golden Arches themselves, the undisputed heavyweight champ of global fast food, recently reported their worst domestic sales decline since the pandemic, all while scoring lower on consumer satisfaction indexes than literally any other major competitor in the country. The math simply doesn't work anymore for the average consumer, and the breaking point has officially arrived. When a family of four can easily spend close to $80 or $100 at a counter-service restaurant where they have to bus their own table, the psychological contract between the consumer and the fast food industry fractures completely. People are breaking decades-old habits overnight. They are driving past the familiar neon signs because they refuse to pay a premium price for a lukewarm hockey puck of meat and subpar service. Yet, amidst this burning wreckage of corporate greed and operational failure, there is an anomaly. They're a single chain that has resisted every single modern corporate temptation. They don't use freezers, they don't use microwaves, they haven't fundamentally altered their menu since Harry Truman was in the White House. And most importantly, they can still hand you a fresh, perfectly executed double cheeseburger combo meal for under $10, completely exposing the $20 pricing models of their competitors as absolute fiction. How does a company maintain a near-religious cult following, pay its workers well above industry standards, and keep its prices at a level that makes the rest of the market look like collective moral failure? To understand how the industry reached this point of absolute polarization, we have to look past the marketing gimmicks, the viral TikTok items, and the executive speak on investor calls. We have to rank the 16 major player chains dominating the landscape in 2026, from the absolute worst offenders to the undisputed king. We are uncovering the hidden mechanics of how these companies operate, the geographic traps that doom regional expansion, and the exact business decisions that turned your favorite childhood burger joints into overpriced, hollowed-out versions of their former selves. The gap between number 16 and number 1 is no longer just about the quality of the bun or the sear on the griddle. It is a direct reflection of whether a multi-million-dollar corporation views you as a valued guest, or merely an asset to be optimized by a pricing algorithm before the doors finally close for good. To diagnose how the American burger industry fragmented into a landscape of bankruptcies and $20 combo meals, one must analyze the structural mechanics of the fast food franchise model and the geographic traps that catch aggressive corporations. The current crisis is not a sudden phenomenon of 2026. It is the direct consequence of private equity acquisitions over leveraged debt and real estate strategies implemented over the past 3 decades. The divergence began when major chains shifted away from food operations and transformed into real estate holding companies, leaving individual franchise owners to absorb the volatile costs of labor and ingredients. A primary historical trigger occurred during the private equity boom of the 2000s and 2010s. Institutional investors targeted mature fast food brands, utilizing leveraged buyouts to acquire chains like Carl's Jr., Hardee's, and Burger King. In a leveraged buyout, the acquisition debt is placed directly onto the balance sheet of the acquired company. To service this massive debt load, corporate parent companies like CKE Restaurants and Restaurant Brands International systematically increased franchise fees, cut corporate support staff, and pushed supply chain costs onto operators. Under this financial framework, menu prices were forced upward to protect corporate margins, completely decoupling the price of a burger from its actual ingredient quality simultaneously. The industry fell victim to a severe geographic trap known in retail logistics as clustering dilution. Brands seeking rapid national scale, such as Smashburger and BurgerFi, expanded rapidly outside their core regional bastions. BurgerFi, founded in Florida in 2011, attempted to establish a premium fast casual footprint across the Northeast and Midwest. In doing so, the company bypassed established supply chain corridors. In 2021, BurgerFi acquired Anthony's Coal Fire Pizza for approximately $157 million, a transaction that severely strained its cash reserves right as macroeconomic inflation escalated. Without a dense cluster of physical locations to share regional distribution and marketing costs, individual units became financially unsustainable. By the time the corporate entity filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, the operational supply lines were completely fractured, leading to the erratic ingredient quality and abrupt store closures recorded across the Midwest in 2024 and 2025. The historical trajectory of Jack in the Box offers an explicit case study in operational mismanagement and failed restructuring. Established in San Diego in 1951, the chain pioneered the drive-through intercom system and built a high-density footprint across the West Coast and Texas. However, the brand never successfully resolved its geographic isolation from the eastern half of the United States. When regional sales began decelerating in the early 2020s, corporate management initiated the Jack on Track program. The operational mandate focused on aggressive menu rationalization and the decommissioning of underperforming assets. Between 2024 and mid-2026, the corporate office authorized the termination of franchise agreements for 150 to 200 locations. Data from the first quarter of 2026 confirms that this contraction failed to stabilize the capital structure as same-store sales dropped 6.7% and system-wide revenue contracted by 7.1%. The closures fundamentally damaged the brand's supply chain density, raising logistics costs for the surviving restaurants. A contrasting historical pathway is observed in the Midwestern corporate strategy of Culver's. Founded in Sauk City, Wisconsin in 1984, the company adopted a slow, supply chain-first growth model. Corporate policy mandates that no franchise can open unless it resides within a strict geographic radius of designated distribution centers. This operational constraint guarantees that the fresh, never-frozen beef patties and dairy products from regional farms arrive at individual kitchens within specific temperature parameters. By controlling the supply lines and refusing to use public markets or private equity debt for expansion, Culver's insulated its franchise network from the cash flow crises affecting its leveraged competitors. Consequently, the chain maintained stable overhead costs, allowing a double Butterburger to remain priced under $8 in 2026 while heavily leveraged competitors charged nearly double for equivalent products for the global giants like McDonald's. The historical trap was built on aggressive real estate monetization. Under the classic corporate model established by Harry Sonneborn, McDonald's corporate purchases the land under its restaurants and leases it back to franchisees, often taking a percentage of gross sales as rent. While this strategy created a highly stable corporate revenue stream, it placed extreme financial pressure on independent operators during periods of economic contraction. As labor costs rose and ingredient costs surged, franchisees demanded pricing flexibility. The corporate response was the termination of national value menus, enabling individual operators to raise prices independently. 10 years of compounding price hikes resulted in McDonald's menu items outstripping the general rate of inflation by 300%. The mathematical reality of 2026 shows that this strategy has reached its limit, when a legacy value brand completely abandons its entry-level price points to preserve real estate yields. It alienates the low-income consumer base that built its global market share. The historic records prove that the burger chains currently facing systemic decline are not victims of changing consumer tastes, but rather victims of precise corporate decisions. The reliance on private equity debt, the pursuit of unmanaged national expansion without supply chain density, and the prioritization of real estate extraction over food quality created a structurally fragile industry. When inflation began testing the purchasing power of the American consumer, the structurally compromised brands had no choice but to raise prices and close doors. The market conditions of 2026 are simply executing a delayed financial sentence on companies that traded operational consistency for short-term balance sheet engineering. The contemporary reality of the American burger industry is defined by an escalating clash between corporate cost-saving initiatives and severe consumer resistance. In 2026, the operational environment has devolved into a dead end, characterized by structural corporate maneuvers, legal disputes, and high-stakes infrastructure overhauls. This friction manifests most clearly in the implementation of automated technologies, regional legal battles, and the aggressive pricing shifts that have fundamentally altered the economics of fast casual dining. The most prominent corporate battleground centers on algorithmic pricing and consumer data collection. In February 2024, Wendy's Chief Executive Officer Kirk Tanner announced during an investor call that the corporation would allocate $30 million toward dynamic pricing models powered by AI-driven digital menu boards. The corporate strategy intended to alter menu prices automatically based on real-time consumer traffic, weather patterns, and regional demand density. Internal corporate reports suggested this mechanism could optimize profit margins during peak lunch and dinner hours. However, the announcement triggered immediate legislative and consumer pushback. Federal and state authorities scrutinized the transparency of digital menu boards under Consumer Protection Acts, citing potential price gouging. Although Wendy's management attempted to reframe the initiative as a system designed for off-peak discounts, market data from early 2026 indicates the damage to consumer trust was systemic. Compounding this public relations crisis, Wendy's finalized plans to shutter approximately 350 underperforming domestic units by the end of 2026, targeting locations where customer traffic numbers fell below the minimum operational thresholds required to sustain the new digital infrastructure simultaneously. The industry is grappling with massive legal and financial instability within its franchise networks. In April 2025, Consolidated Burger Holdings, an independent franchisee operating 57 Burger King locations across Florida and Georgia, officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Court documents revealed that the operator had been engaged in a prolonged financial dispute with Burger King corporate since 2019 regarding mandatory remodeling expenditures and supply chain pricing. The franchisee alleged that corporate-mandated building updates, executed under the National Reclaim the Flame turnaround program, required capital expenditures that could not be recovered through local sales. This legal and operational friction has caused a highly volatile consumer experience. While Burger King corporate poured hundreds of millions of dollars into national marketing campaigns and menu reformulations, the physical execution at the ground level deteriorated due to capital flight. Audits conducted by consumer research firms in late 2025 and 2026 highlighted extreme variations in order accuracy, food temperature, and staffing levels across franchise-owned locations. Illustrating the deep structural divide between corporate marketing goals and real-world execution, the financial pressure is equally severe in the premium fast casual segment, where high-end ingredient sourcing faces the reality of consumer spending limits. Shake Shack and Five Guys represent the upper ceiling of this pricing crisis. Financial statements from 2025 and the first half of 2026 show that a standard meal at these establishments frequently exceeds $20 per person. Five Guys, utilizing fresh beef fried in premium peanut oil and offering customized toppings, has maintained its ingredient standards but at a drastic cost to its market reach. The American Customer Satisfaction Index tracked a significant 4-point drop for Five Guys, directly correlating with consumer dissatisfaction over the value proposition. Independent pricing audits indicate that a basic bacon cheeseburger from Five Guys now commands an $11 baseline price in major metropolitan markets. This premium positioning has forced these counter-service brands into direct financial competition with traditional casual dining chains, where table service and broader menus are standard. Capping the growth potential of the fast casual model, this environment has allowed a distinct tier of regional operators to capture significant market share by maintaining strict operational efficiency and lower price points. Freddy's Frozen Custard and Steak Burgers and the Habburger Grill have systematically expanded into areas vacated by contracting national brands. The Habit Burger Grill, owned by Yum Brands, has utilized a controlled development strategy, maintaining an open-flame charbroiling method that differentiates its product line without the massive capital expenditures that crippled over-leveraged chains. Similarly, Steak 'n Shake managed a critical operational pivot to stabilize its business model. After facing severe financial strain from its legacy sit-down diner format, the company executed a nationwide transition to self-service kiosk ordering. While this shift drew criticism from older demographics accustomed to traditional table service, financial data from 2025 and 2026 shows the elimination of front-of-house labor costs successfully preserved the chain's budget-friendly pricing structure, allowing it to rank second overall in multiple national burger quality studies. The ongoing public health and safety challenges have further complicated the corporate landscape. The late 2024 E. coli outbreak linked to slivered onions on McDonald's Quarter Pounders served as a stark demonstration of supply chain vulnerability. The incident, which caused dozens of documented illnesses across multiple states, forced the immediate suspension of ingredient distribution and severely depressed same-store sales figures through the first half of 2025. To recover lost consumer traffic, McDonald's corporate was forced to initiate the Best Burger program in late 2025 and introduce a heavily subsidized $3 value menu in April 2026. This move pressured the company's financial margins, forcing corporate to absorb loss leader tactics to win back low-income demographics. The current corporate landscape is entirely polarized. National giants are forced to deploy defensive pricing and technological interventions to survive, while specific regional operations exploit their supply chain stability to win an aggressive war of attrition.